It all starts with that sequence of impulse, of pausing and saying, okay, what am I spending my time on? Why do I need to share this opinion? What is really behind it? And how can I spend it better? Maybe I can start a dialogue. Maybe I can send them a DM, or maybe I can share it in a more constructive way. But it all starts with that. That's what I've noticed with these Stoic walks, and by just, workshops and interacting with people in real life, is then you can really look at the core of the points that people are making, and not online. You never get the right nuance. You never get the feeling of what they're actually doing and meaning behind it. And that's something that I think is super valuable to think about. I remember a while back, this is actually a long time, far before I started my social media things on Stoicism, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, this channel. My sister gave me a t-shirt that said, "Twatter, nobody cares what you're saying." And I was laughing at it at the time. It's like, yeah, I wasn't involved with social media at all. But obviously, when you start your own, endeavor like me with Via Stoica and before the Stoic Padawan, you want to have people following you. You want to reach people. You want to have, you have something to say, like I do with my podcast here. But more and more, as I started in this journey, I've realized there's a different level of doing that, right? There's a way of doing it with the right intentions, and there's a way of doing it for other reasons. And that's something that I've really learned to see and really experienced, where it falls in for me, and where at one point it is actually what the t-shirt said, is like, no one really cares what you're saying. And the good thing about, this channel and about what I'm doing is I feel really passionate about saying this, but it's also because I feel like it's something that I want to say. And luckily, and I'm really appreciative of all the nice comments and the feedback I'm getting. But there's the other side of it, and that's what I really wanted to talk about in this episode. And this is not about whether you have an opinion or not, because everybody has opinions. I have them as well, but it's about what you do with them. It's how you express them, and what is actually the goal of you sharing your opinion. And also later on, we'll see it like, what can it tell you about yourself? Because that's the real key. And when we talk about Stoic philosophy, all of this is information about who we are and what drives us, what triggers us, and what moves us in a certain direction. And the opinions are the best source of information we can get about ourselves, because we can read something and there's this instant impulse of, no, this is wrong, this is bad, this is good, this is great. And then you can see, wow, this is something that really tells me who I am, what I value, where my priorities are. And when we're looking at making a philosophy of life, that's the information you want to use. That's the things you want to add up to, or just detract from, and then see, okay, this is how I want to live my life. And even when we look at the ancient Romans, or the Greeks, when you read the stories and you go into the history, they were influenced, by people. And obviously there was a little bit more violence behind it, like physical violence. But now when we are looking at the social media culture that we have, and believe me, I've been involved. I started on Twitter with the spaces, which I did a lot of, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. It really helped me to speak about the topic, to learn how to be a better public speaker, and to manage groups in that way. But it also showed me how quick the attention span is and how volatile it is, actually. And you've got to stay on top if you really want to grow your business, if you really want to grow your voice on social media. You've got to follow the algorithm. And the Stoics would say is that depending on how much value you place in this, you'll become a slave to the algorithm. And that's also what these opinions are about. People share opinions. People want to be provocative. People want to make sure they pull you out of that place where you feel comfortable, and they want to show like, this is what is happening, and this is what I feel about it. And they scream it at you, and they use words that they know will trigger you. And then it's up to you to think, okay, what am I going to do with it? But it's still out there, and it's so quickly, and it's, we have these opinions. They flow over our screens, and with one scroll they're gone, and there's the next one. So we also have to make sure that we kind of protect ourselves from being caught up in that wave of feelings, anxiety, and worries, because the algorithm rewards this kind of behavior. not just from the person posting it, but also from us when we are replying to it, when we are commenting, because that's what the algorithm wants. And that's what what the influencers, the original posters, if you will, are looking for. Because if you don't get any comments, no one is going to see it. You've got to make sure that your voice is heard, and you got to make sure that you push the right buttons, or the wrong buttons, if you will. But I always ask myself, and I've started to do that more and more after kind of stepping down on posting on social media, because what am I gaining from it? What am I adding to the world? Am I just becoming a negative or hostile influence to the world, triggering people? Why can't I just add something that is more positive or more constructive? And that's something that along this journey, tried to develop in a better way. And one of the things is posting these videos. They might seem, a little provocative as well, but I think that they are touching on points that are, in my personal case, very relevant. And these are the questions that I have asked myself. So I have an opinion. What am I going to do with it? And by asking these questions, you can then really put yourself on a different level of, okay, so what am I going to do right now? And that's what I wanted to look into. Because when we look at beyond that need to stay relevant, to be heard, to influence other people, or just for a certain call of justice that you feel, the Stoics believe that, we all have strong opinions. We definitely, feel them, and the Stoics had them as well. When we read the discourses and we read the conversations they had, for example, against the Epicureans, they were very strong discourses and dialogues, but it felt a little bit different. It felt like they were trying to figure out the best way of life. Yet trying also to keep people in their school, right? That's pretty much what we're doing. We have an in-group, and we're trying to keep people in our group, and also bring new people in. And strong opinions will help people learn what you stand for, and make, identify yourself a little bit beyond the masses. But having an opinion and feeling obliged to share it, that's a different story. That's where we might feel the pressure. Like, I have this, people need to know this, because if not, then the world will collapse. But have you once stopped and not share an opinion and then see what happens? As you said, one scroll, one flick of the finger, and it's gone. And your opinion is nowhere to be seen. Try finding it back. I've had posts of other people, and I try looking for them, and there's no way to find it, because there's already hundreds of thousands new ones, and good luck. And this is where the discipline of assent comes in from the Stoics. We have these impulses, especially now when we look at the world through the screen, the feeds of people we follow or just happen to come across our views. They give us certain impulses, and a lot of them. That's really what it's all about. And if you I started a TikTok for the channel as well, and I have my editor. I'm very grateful for what he all does. Help me out with that, and I share it. I like statistics, so I look at it. But at the beginning, when you open a new platform like this, it tells you literally, it's like, oh, give me 5 minutes, and then I'll know what you like. Because the algorithms know what you stay on, what you watch a little bit longer than the rest, and then they just feed all of that to you. And then especially if you leave comments, likes, and interact with them, even more. And if you comment on the things that really trigger you, you're going to see more of that, right? So you're going to have more impulses. And this is where the Stoic training comes in, because Stoics realize that these impulses are not controllable. We'll get them. You see something, and instantly your previous experiences, beliefs, or views, they will then add something to it. You will feel this excitement. You read some word. It's like, oh, this is, making me angry, and I need to share this. I need to voice it. But that's also where the Stoics come in, and they say, wait a minute, you don't need to. Let's see what's really going on here. Let's at least finish reading the post. Make sure that you understand exactly what it is, because that happens to me many times. I read something and I was like, oh, this is upsetting me, blah, blah, blah. And then I read it again. It's like, oh, wait a minute. It wasn't really meant that way. And I just read what I wanted to read, right? Because we read it through our filter. And that's why the Stoics, they tell us, just take a step back, read your little feed. I read it because I like the information. Some of it is interesting to read, to see new developments going on. That also helps, realigning what you see on your in your feeds. But it's good to take that step back. it's good to say, wait a minute, let me just pause here for a second before I hit that reply button, before I start, pressing all these buttons and making these words and all of that stuff. Let me just see what's really going on. And I've went through that process myself. At the beginning, it was like I read something, and the time I've lost with these things, it's incredible. I've, first of all, just writing it, but then also just reading it, seeing, thinking about it, or mulling it over. It's like, oh, I've got to say something. This was really bad. Oh, and what I'm going to say now is really smart, and it's going to change the world, and maybe even change the person who posted it. And then you posted and nothing. And then all that time is gone, all that effort, all that energy spent doing something that really doesn't move the needle much. Maybe he does for one person, maybe he doesn't, but that's no longer up to me. But I've managed to think about it. I've managed to take a step back. And at the beginning, it was difficult. At the beginning, I've had many times where I've already halfway written my reply, finished almost my comment, read it through, and then I sat back, is like, really? What am I doing here? And I just deleted it. And that really gave me that first step of no longer really wanting to reply, but using the information of the impulse to see, okay, why is this really affecting me? And that step is something that I've noticed gradually, just because I've also decided to think about what I want to spend my time on. And now I'm here in the Netherlands. It's a hot summer. The spring was nice. I went to Spain, and it's nice to be outside. It's nice to go for walks. And I've been going for these Stoic walks for the last year and a half, maybe a bit longer by now. Every Tuesday, meeting people now here in the Netherlands, before in Spain. And that's great. That's where you can really speak to people. That's where you can really share and hear what they're saying, and maybe go back a little bit to the ancient dialogues that the Greeks and Romans had, and really build an idea of life instead of breaking people down. But it all starts with that sequence of impulse, of pausing and saying, okay, what am I spending my time on? Why do I need to share this opinion? What is really behind it? And how can I spend it better? Maybe I can start a dialogue. Maybe I can send them a DM, or maybe I can share it in a more constructive way. But it all starts with that pause. It all starts with realizing that you have been triggered by something, taking a step back, and then really kind of looking at your opinion. And I still sometimes share my opinions, my thoughts here and there, but I try to do it in a more constructive way. And I try to also look at the viewpoint of the one who's posting it, or, even comments on my videos. I take them serious, and I reply to them personally, even the emails that I get, after I send out my newsletter or any of those things. And I've had strong opinions sent to me, and I take them seriously. And I want to understand why people react in such a way, because it fascinates me, first of all, to see how people think and how people interact with each other, but also to say, okay, let's talk about this. Let's see where it really is hurting for you. And that's a lesson that I've learned, to not take things too personally, to know that there is something behind it for the other person. And, at the end of the day, I am a Stoic coach, and I try to help people as much as I can. And if I see this much pain and hurt in an opinion, or in a shared comment, let's see if I can help. Let's see if there's a way that we can figure out what's really behind it. And that's something that I've done for myself as well, to really see, okay, what is my intention behind it? Or where is my hurt? Why do I feel so offended by it? And by asking those questions, I oftentimes realize I don't. This is something that really doesn't, why would I worry about this? I've got enough in my life going on to think about and to worry about. And if there's something I can really do about it, then hey, why not? But that's what I've noticed with these Stoic walks, and by just, workshops and interacting with people in real life, is then you can really look at the core of the points that people are making, and not online. You never get the right nuance. You never get the feeling of what they're actually doing and meaning behind it. And that's something that I think is super valuable to think about. And there's something else I think that really helps here, is the piece of just letting go, of reading the feed, getting the information you want about the topic that people share, and seeing, hey, is there something I can do about it? But also about, as we said before, what it tells you about you. And I try to let go. And I'd say, okay, you know what? If I walk away from this for 5 minutes, will I still think about it? Or will other thoughts or other problems, issues that I'm dealing with popped into my mind? whether I'm going to have to go to the grocery store, or whether I have to do laundry, or what am I going to cook, or any of these other things that are the real important things, right? Or when am I going to meet with this person? Should I send them to see how they're doing? If you walk away for it for a few minutes and then think about it, maybe you've already forgotten it. But that letting go part, that gives you so much peace. And then looking at what your role is, your sphere of influence, and really what you're trying to do with it. But the problem is that there's so many people who are attaching all this value to these social media platforms, and a lot of people are making a lot of money out of it. And that's something that entices other people to do the same. It's like, wow, I can build this business, I can do this online, and look at how much money I can make, and they're doing it, right? But you don't know how much effort and time they're putting into it. It looks easy, right? But if you really want to build something, and believe me, I've tried my LinkedIn strategies, I've tried my Twitter or X strategies. It's just so much time. You've got to put so much effort in all the comments. You've got to read everything. You've got to do all the right steps according to the algorithm. And then if you do the wrong thing, they can just ban you. But you've got to do what you believe in. If this is something that you feel honestly that you want to be doing, great. That's all about intentions. Everything that you put behind it is like, what do I want to do about it? I'm not saying that it's bad, but I'm just saying that if you want to go do it, make sure that you know what you're putting yourself into. And is it just doing it about getting followers or being heard? What is the intention behind it? That's the key. And that's what the Stoics say, that's where your freedom lies. But make sure that it's based on correct judgments. Make sure that you have examined the impression, the impulse, and then follow through with it with right action. And then you'll see that 80-90% of the things you read online don't really warrant a comment. They don't really warrant your time. Just let go, move on, and live your life where it's needed, outside or wherever. And I think that that's a good thing to do. After this, episode, leave your comments, share your opinions with me, please do so. But also ask yourself, what am I living for? What am I doing in the real world? And go out. Maybe you're listening to this on the walk. Turn it off. Listen to nature. Just walk and just be there. And this letting go isn't about passivity. It's about pointing your attention to where it is needed. And if you stay stuck in this opinion, if you stay stuck in something that you've read, ask yourself, what does this really say about me? So thank you for listening. We'll hope to see you in the next time. Leave your comments and opinions. Also like and subscribe, and hope to see you in the next one.